Hare Krishna and welcome to the second part of farm management. Here we will be speaking about the present crisis that's there in the world. Then we will be speaking about the environmental, economic and social sustainability part of a farm. So let's start with the present crisis. You know, there are many people who say that there is an environmental crisis going on. Others say that, it's an economic depression and there is an economic crisis. But actually, when we go deeply and we see the details of these crises, then we see that all of these boil down to one thing, and that's social crisis. Social crisis meaning that the people do not understand that they cannot grow unlimitedly in a limited environment, that sustainable growth it's only a myth. You know, it's impossible to grow unlimitedly when you have only limited resources. So that greed that really is the foundation of social crisis, and that greed leads to economic and environmental problems. We can see that there is provisional crisis, there is resource crisis. In regards to the environment, we are exploiting, we are extracting much more resources that can be renewed in the time. So actually, what we should really focus on is not how the environmental and the economic crisis causes social problems, but the other way around. We should understand what are the social problems, what are the individual problems, what are the individual qualities, and how those affect the environment and the economy. To counteract that social crisis, we have to develop the right consciousness. And when we speak about developing a farm or maintaining the farm, then these three levels of consciousness comes naturally. But actually, we really have to teach these things to people so that they understand that everything is depending on them. Everything is depending on the individual. And the individual should change to change the larger picture. So the three levels of a sustainable consciousness, if we could say, is the level of the individual, the level of the society, and the level of the environment. On the level of the individual, we try to develop a lifestyle that's in harmony with the ecosystem. When we read the Ishopanishad, then we understand that everyone has their own proportion that's set aside for him. So we should use only that proportion. We should not hanker for more. And lifestyle and thinking in harmony with the ecosystem would mean that we live a simple life. We live a life that's sustainable. We don't use more resources than we need. We are living a healthy life. We do meditation and yoga, and we eat natural foodstuffs, not what coming from huge industrial farms, but we try to live a simple life, and we eat what we can produce, and we produce what we need. On the level of the society, we try to develop an ecological ethics-based culture. That means that we try to have those rules and regulations set that would keep the society, the environment, and the economy sustainable on the long term. So we try to live a communal life in a way that people who are living in the community, the devotees who are living on the farm, they feel happy, they feel fulfilled, and they have the chance to go back to Godhead at the end of their life because they live their whole life in harmony with Krishna's laws. So the third level of sustainable consciousness or eco-consciousness is the level of the environment, where we strive to enhance the productivity of the ecosystem. We know from the Bhagavad Gita that the demigods will provide all the resources if the proper yagyas are there. So for us, here in the Kali Yuga, the proper yagyas are set. The proper yagya is Sankirtan Yagya. So we have to understand what are those yagyas, what are those processes, what's our sadhana, what's the abhideya that we have to practice so that all the resources will be provided properly. But there is another aspect of it. It's not only how the resources are provided, but how they are used. And to use the resources properly, we have to have an overall understanding of the environment. And when we live on a farm, we live in a farm community, then we have to understand how the different elements of the environment are linked together. We have to see how the productivity of the ecosystem can be enhanced by natural means, natural fertilizers, and how to use natural pesticides, how to use natural methods of cultivation of the land, and all the different natural elements of a simple life. So when we implement these 3 levels of sustainability or eco-consciousness, then we see that there is a result. And the result can be measured. And the result can be measured by, for example, an ecological footprint study. And since I know quite a lot of eco-villages and intentional villages, I can tell you that Krishna Valley in Hungary has the smallest ecological footprint of the eco-villages that are there in the global eco-village network and that were measured. And actually, if we see the exact numbers, then we can see that the ecological footprint of Krishna Valley is less than 1.4 hectares. So ecological footprint basically means, in a simplified explanation, how much land do you need to produce your needs, and how much land do you need to nutrify your waste or your output. And these 2 things put together, that will determine your ecological footprint. The ecological footprint of the world is now 2.4, maybe even a bit more than 2.4 hectares per capita. That means that it's really high, because the capacity of the world is less than 1.8 hectare per capita. And as population grows, this number is shrinking. So Krishna Valley is less than 1.4 hectare per capita, with the capacity of 1.8 hectare. That means that actually it's the most sustainable eco-village that has been measured so far. And it includes a lot of things. It includes traveling to India. It includes that our cloth is coming from India, and that we travel with cars and we use petrol, and all these things are there. But the lifestyle we live, it's so simple and it's so sublime that actually it gives the opportunity to have a scientific measurement that's resulting in having 25% less ecological footprint than Krishna Valley's biological capacity. So if we think along these lines of ecological footprint, then we can see that that alarming number and that alarm that people say that the world is overpopulated, it's actually not true. Or at least it's not true in a sense as people who would think. Because if everyone would live the lifestyle that devotees are living there in Krishna Valley, then we would easily accommodate around 10 to 11 billion people on the globe. And our lifestyle is quite high standard. And our lifestyle is, it involves a lot of things. So We have a lot of areas there in Krishna Valley that's not there in usually most of the people's life who are living in cities. So Krishna Valley is 270 hectares. We have a garden, we have a forest, we have a botanical garden, we have apiary, we have a Goshala, we have really nice parks around Krishna Valley. We have more than 800 holy places around the premises of Krishna Valley. So wherever we go, we can remember Krishna. Wherever we go, there's a park. Wherever we meet with the devotees, it's like a botanical garden. So actually the lifestyle that Krishna Valley lives and the standard of living that's there in Krishna Valley is quite high. So don't ever believe that simple living means low standard of living. Simple living means it's a high standard of living with high morals, high ethics, high values, and the way back to Godhead. So sustainable living has 9 main areas. And those areas should always be there. And how we live in these areas and how we develop these areas, that will actually determine the standard of living, that will determine the lifestyle, and that will determine also the necessities and the resources that we would need. So the 9 areas are, first of all, housing, then food and water. So the 9 areas of primary necessities are food and water, housing, clothing, education, medicine, transportation, heating and lighting, arts and crafts, and safety. So these are the 9 areas that we should focus on when we are developing a farm. And these areas should be developed to a degree that we can provide our needs in a sustainable way. Just watch the use of the word. I said sustainable, not self-sufficient. There could be some areas that you could be self-sufficient. Like you should be self-sufficient in vegetables, food and grain and water. That's obvious. But you have to see whether you can be self-sufficient in making your own clothes or not. Whether you can have your own medicine or you cannot. You have to see whether you can, you should have cars for transportation or you should not have it. Because everything can be local and you don't need a lot of other things from outside, so you don't need a car, you can just ride a bike. But if we think about riding a bike, I'm sure that not most of our farms would have iron or metal production, because you know it's not something that each and every farm would need. So we should be sustainable, and in most areas we should strive for self-sufficiency. But self-sufficiency will only be possible if there is a network of farms. A farm on its own will never be self-sufficient fully. So we have to understand what our goals are, and we have to do networking, and we have to have a network of farms and city temples. And actually this network will finally somehow in the future result in developing Varnashram. A standalone farm or a standalone city temple will never pursue and never reach a full-fledged Varnashram community. So that was the small introduction to sustainability. Hare Krishna. So let's speak about environmental sustainability. So when we are speaking about sustainability, then as we spoke about that before, there are these 3 main aspects of it: environmental, social, and economic. And Hungarian sociologists say that the hardest sustainability to achieve is social sustainability. because it depends on the individual and the individual's free will. And just as I was there in the Copenhagen Climate Summit in 2009, and Ivo de Boer there said that we have all the resources to counteract climate change. We would say that even we have the money and even we have the political will, still we will lack one thing, and that's how to influence the individual to understand that he should decrease his need to a proper level. So social sustainability is the hardest to achieve. Environmental sustainability can be achieved much more easier. Let's speak about that now. So when we speak about environmental sustainability, there are environmental systems that we are speaking about. There's the land, the air, the water, and these environmental systems, they are really closely interconnected. And there are certain stresses that are there for these environments, and we should be aware of those, because these stresses usually we cause. So the first thing that causes stress is our consumption. And our consumption should be based on our needs and not our greed, as it has been said that the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for one man's greed. So we should understand that our needs should be limited properly. So our consumption gives a lot of stress to the environmental system, especially when it comes to the next stress, and that is pollution. And pollution is coming from different sources. It comes from waste, it comes from our energy need, it comes from everything that we try to use, but gradually that we just don't use it, or we use it only for a limited time, and still it's working, but we just put it in the waste basket. So all these things are giving quite a lot of stress to the environment. If we just think about these huge, massive plastic islands that are floating in the ocean, that's a real stress. Or if we see how much carbon dioxide we just pump up in the air. So all these things are environmental stresses, and this forces actually the environmental systems to work in a different way. They try to counteract these stresses, and by trying to counteract these, they will change their patterns, like the climate change. So if we put more CO2 in the atmosphere, then there will be a reaction to it. And the reaction is that the temperature will increase, and with the temperature increasing, there will be a lot of other effects that are there. The melting of the ice caps, and the raising of the sea level, and the movement of the different species. Like in Europe, we have different species of insects that we have never ever seen before in our life. So all these things are affecting each other, and these environmental systems are really sensitive. So we have to be aware of these things, and we have to understand that we also play a role in changing the environmental systems, and we cause stress on it. So with environmental sustainability, there are main principles that we should always keep in mind when we manage a farm. First of all, we have to understand what are the threshold values, meaning how much resources we would like to use that's coming from outside, how much resource can we develop from inside, what's available. And we have to put a limit, a determined limit on the resources that we are using from outside. How much gas, how much electricity, in what areas of the farm we allow these things to be used. How much wood would we like to use? What are the resources that we allow to have from outside? So all these things should be determined, and regularly we should check these. And if we go beyond the threshold values that we already determined, then we should stop, we should sit down, and we should revisit principles that we set right in the beginning. So we understand that there are limits in our natural environment, and we must not go beyond those limits. The next main principle in environmental sustainability is conserving the natural environment. We have to see what are the natural species around in the area where we have that farm, and we have to propagate the cultivation of those plants that are aboriginal over there. We have to understand how to grow those aboriginal fruits and vegetables, how to grow them nicely, because usually these plants that are there, those, if they are in their natural habitat, they have the best capacity to counteract any environmental harm. They have a natural capacity to fight against viruses and bacteria and even insects. So if we have these original or aboriginal plants and species there on the farm, and we cultivate them properly, then it will strengthen our environment. That will also strengthen the biodiversity, and protecting the natural environment and propagating the aboriginal species, and also developing the natural environment. It's really important for us, because in this way we can have a biodiversity, and the more diverse environment we have, the more natural we can live. I just give you a very simple example. In Krishna Valley, when we moved there were only 26 different species of birds. Now we have planted more than 450,000 trees. And over the 21 years of Krishna Valley's existence since '93, we developed the natural habitat so much that now we have more than 140 birds within Krishna Valley. So it's like, it's an enormous growth in the biodiversity. And it really helps us to use natural methods of agriculture and to enhance productivity of the ecosystem. Okay, so let's see the 7 main areas of environmental sustainability. First, let's start with agriculture. There's a really nice quote from Srila Prabhupada where he emphasizes the local production. But we are not going to develop a competitive farming enterprise for making money. The basic principle is to become independent of artificial city life, working in factories producing nuts and bolts. Gandhi has this idea that one defect was that there was no Krishna in the center. So the same village organization, but keeping Krishna in the center, should be introduced on our farm projects. Letter to Yashamati Nandana, 14th October 1976. So local production is really important for agriculture. We are not trying to develop a huge agricultural enterprise. What we try to do is see what's available locally, use that, and try to consume locally. That means that we produce what we need and we eat what we produce. It's a very, very simple principle, and we have to use that. So in regards to agriculture, in each and every area, in each and every farm, we should see what are the natural methods of cultivating the land. It is important that we try to produce everything what we need locally for the agricultural production. That we can have our own pesticides, our own fertilizers. We can link the different elements of our farm so that we can have, for example, fertilizers like composting. We can compost everything that's coming out of the kitchen. We can compost everything that's coming out of our kitchen. We can also compost cow dung. We can compost the leftovers on the field after harvesting the grain. So we can use a lot of things. We can produce biogas from this, and also we can use the outcome or the leftover from the biogas as fertilizers on the field. So we have to understand what are those methods that we can use to have a natural gardening, natural agriculture that is bereft of pesticides, fertilizers that are chemical, and that does not use any oil or any fossil fuels. Planning of agriculture also starts with the need. If we understand what the community's needs are, then we will be able to understand what plans should we make to have a proper agriculture. This means that actually we have to see what are the needs of the individuals who are there in the community. In Krishna Valley, what we do is that we try to see what are the medical necessities, what are the body types of the different devotees, and based on that, we try to develop the kitchen in a way that it's healthy for all the devotees. And also, that will determine what the kitchen will order from the garden. And when the garden would have that order, then they will plan what to cultivate according to the kitchen's order. So it's a very simple method, but we have to have a systems thinking. Just as we were speaking about linking the different functional areas, like in composting, then also we have to have a systems thinking when we are planning not just the agriculture, but everything else on the farm. But back to planning the agriculture, based on our needs, we understand how much cucumber, potato, tomato, and all the other vegetables would we need. We understand what's the natural habitat, what the present climate of our farm would be able to provide. And based on these things, we can identify what are the different plants, the different grains, and what else we would like to cultivate. So everything is based on the need. And the agriculture is not there to do agriculture. The agriculture is there for a goal, and that goal is to provide the necessities of the community. There are three main areas of agriculture. One is gardening, the other is field cultivation, and the third is animal husbandry. So when it comes to gardening, that's usually providing the everyday foodstuff that we need, like vegetables and fruits. The field or crop cultivation, that means providing the oils, providing the grain, providing the energy that's needed, providing all the food for the animals. So all these things are there in crop cultivation. And the third is animal husbandry. It has two main parts for us, for devotees. One is cow protection, and the other is having bees. And if someone would like to venture into making clothes, then they could keep sheep, so they can have wool, and then they can produce some woolen cloth. But basically, in most of the cases, we would need these two things: cow protection and apiary. So when we are speaking about cow protection, and we are not getting into the details of managing a Goshala, if you would like to have that, then you really have to go to a farm and have own hands experience about how to manage a Goshala. But it's really important for us to understand that taking care for cows is a lifetime mission. You cannot just have some cows and the next day you think that, okay, I don't want to protect the cows anymore because it's just too tough. And at the same time, you have to understand when it comes to a Goshala, that Goshala means that there will be calves. And if there are calves, then there will be bulls and there will be cows also. You have to do something with the bulls, and usually bulls can work on the land. And to train a bull to work on the land and to be able to transfer things usually takes around 3 years. And to train a cowboy, a cowherd man, that takes around 3 years also. So it's quite some time to train. It's quite some time that we invest in training. And also we should see what we would like to have from the Goshala. Would we like to have a Goshala for the work that the oxen and the bulls can provide? Would we like to have a Goshala because of the milk? Would we like to have a Goshala because Prabhupada said that we should protect the cows, or it's there in our scriptures that we should protect the cows? You should have answers to these, because that will really determine what kind of Goshala will you develop. Also, when it comes to the Goshala, we have to see that the Goshala can grow very fast, but that really is determined by the limits of the Goshala. I just give you Krishnaveli's bad example in that regard. In the beginning, we were really fired up to have a lot of milk. So we had a lot of milk, but we understood that for milk, we need to have calves. So the cows had calves, and then within 3 to 4 years, our herd just grew to the limits of our Goshala. So then we figured out that, we can't have any more calves. So for 8 years, we had to stop having calves. That affected our milk production, that affected the enthusiasm of the devotees who were serving in the Goshala, and actually it put the Goshala on a low burner. And it took us quite some time until we can again regain a healthy herd. And actually stopping the herd from reproduction for 8 years, that meant that for many years after that, for around 10 years, we had an old herd. And that meant that we did not have so much milk, and the cows could not get pregnant too easily. So everything was like by chance. Maybe we will have a calf, maybe we won't. So it's a really, really important thing when you start a Goshala, to start with proper planning, not just jumping into it and just let's have it. And also, as I said, that cow protection is a lifetime mission. We have to understand that cow protection will not happen without protecting the cow protector. So unless we provide the right facilities for the devotees who are taking care for the cows, we will not have a properly set cow protection project or program. And that could be a real huge failure. And if we have that failure, that could just keep back the farm from growing for a long period of time. So when you would like to have a Goshala, always consult experts before you start it. And those experts have to have a long time experience, and you have to go and see it by yourself, and you have to spend at least 6 months in a Goshala, or you have to send the right people to the Goshala to be trained how to deal with cows.